Life of Love with Jewel Hohman.
Hello, dear friends, and welcome to another episode of Life of Love, where we gather every Thursday to talk about things that can enhance our lives, anything that's vulnerable, anything that we can share to elevate our existence and help live the life that we're meant to be. And so today's a very special day. I get to pick the brain of a friendship expert. Her name is Jewel Hohman, and she's getting certified, and she's been trauma informed and studying to be a therapist. She's on a mission to help over 10,000 people and helping them with creating sustaining and fulfilling friendships, and also helping them be authentic to themselves and within themselves. So I can't think of a more appropriate topic for Life of Love, because friendships just bring so much freshness. They bring vitality to our lives and joy, right? I mean, who doesn't want to have supportive friends around them, cheering them on and feeling connected? So it's a very basic human need, and one that Jewel had noticed, like after COVID, some people just felt disconnected, and maybe COVID made it more obvious. So I'm really excited to introduce and host Jewel today to this show. Thanks for being on Life of Love.
Thank you so much. And what an intro. That was so beautiful. That was so
Well, I appreciate your beautiful message. I mean, so I want to just get into it. Can you share with my audience, can you tell them about your path and what sparked you to say, I deserve a better friendship, or I deserve more strong connections, or what did you see that sparked you to go down this path, and just give us some insight into that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I spent, my goodness, I think the majority of my life being what I would call a social perfectionist. So I had a lot of social anxiety. I was really trying to, get social situations right. And this was such a painful experience. Now, what's so fun, and a lot of people might relate to this, but I never thought I had social anxiety, or that this was, if you will, my quote unquote like issue, because I was extroverted and I had friends. And I was like, well, that doesn't really apply to me. But the truth is, there are socially anxious extroverts. A lot of times they're socially perfectionistic, and there's confident introverts. So recognizing, oh, I was a very socially anxious extrovert was so huge for me. And I did so much work and learned. I have a background in free stereotype. I have a degree in psychology and sociology, and I worked in a psych lab. So I know how to read research articles. And so by diving into, okay, what felt like, what would help me, if you will, like regulate my nervous system and really feel confident, like being myself, and how to deal with some of this social anxiety. So after I had done that, I realized that social anxiety and learning how to work through that was so helpful in connecting me with people in social settings, but I didn't have the meaningful bonds that I really wanted. And so I was like, well, then what the heck? Now, around this time is actually when the pandemic hit. And I was in a situation. So actually, what we know right now is that the loneliest age group is actually in their mid 20s to early 30s, which is very interesting. But typically, this makes a lot of sense, because this is typically when our friendships really change from like college, and from our early 20s, this is typically when people, start getting married, having kids, move, get really involved in their careers, and we're not spending as much time with our friends as we used to. So that was me, right? I was in that group, and a lot of my friends, we're moving, we're far apart. They really had these gaps. They didn't have the bonds I wanted. And so just for myself, like having no intention to start a business, for this to be my life, there's got to be science out there that will help me create meaningful bonds. And there was. And I did. I actually, very recently just started a podcast, and I had two of my friends on, and I that I used the friendship science on, if you will. And it was so fun. But one thing that happened that I was so surprised about was so many people kept coming up to me and be like, "How did you do that? I see you going on all of these like girls trips now. I see you hanging out with these friends. How how did you do that? How did you, become like so confident all of a sudden?" Because even though I was extroverted, that different energy of I'm showing up comfortable being myself was so different. And so that's how I really got started into making this my career. I became honestly I was just very in love with everything that I learned about, and I realized, which I knew, this is so funny, I knew the data. I knew that the majority of our population is lonely regularly. Um, Even like millennials, most of them, not most of them, but a lot of them report having no close friends, and it's the first time we've really seen something like that. Um, Loneliness has been literally increasing since the 1970s. It's only getting worse, and that is even without the pandemic. If the pandemic didn't happen, loneliness was still a problem. So I
Wow.
knew that, but it was a total other experience for people to be like, "Hey, but how did you? But how did you do that? How did you meet these friends?" And that's when I really realized, like, it became that there are humans behind these statistics for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting how you said that, because even if you have friends, you can still feel lonely
Yeah.
within those friendships, because if they're not fulfilling what you need, then you can still feel lonely. So the data that you looked at was actually the loneliness factor. And it sounds like it's its own epidemic. I mean, it's like this silent thing that's just sort of, sucking the life force out of people when they don't feel like they're connected and and having meaningful interactions with other people, like you said. So, wow, so you took extra training and you learned this technique. And did you find out there was something that most people like struggle with? Is it the anxiety of it, just putting themselves out there, or is it the freedom and the joy? Like, is there a theme that is like red lights, like everybody's messing this up?
Yeah. That is such a good question, because it is a little different for everybody.
Okay.
But I will say, like, we have a lot of cultural and structural barriers that we didn't used to have. So, like, for example, third places used to be very prominent, and they're not now. So third places were a place between work and home where people would really gather. We see this in like sitcoms sometimes. Like there's a show called How I Met Your Mother, and they always meet at this bar. But for my grandparents, they went to the bowling alley like 3 times a week. That was their normal. And then they also had their church, where they would go to their church once a week. Those were their third places of between work and home. And we don't really have that anymore, especially now that so many of us are working remotely. So we have some structural things like that, but also we really have like a cultural isolation here. Like there's so many things I could say about it, so many contributing factors. So if anybody's listening to this and they're like, like it is just me. Like I love that you said like it's a silent thing, because when it's silent, there's so much shame about it. There's so much, I should have figured this out already. What's wrong with me that I don't have these meaningful bonds? And the truth is, like, it's absolutely nothing. It doesn't mean anything about how charismatic you are. It doesn't even mean anything about your social anxiety levels or not. What it really means is that you haven't applied like this friendship science, and sometimes people are put in situations where they're naturally applying it, but for most of us, because of the way our culture and our structures are set up, most of us aren't. So I do want to bring awareness to that and give light to that. But I loved your question of what are individuals getting wrong? Because at the same time, just because there are structural things that we want to advocate for and should, it doesn't mean that we're all doomed, right? So a lot of what individuals get wrong is they think that friendship just happens where it doesn't. Maybe I just click with somebody or I do not. And although that idea on some level is so beautiful, and I really get it, because when you do feel really connected with somebody, it does feel like just like this random amazing thing that just happened to you. And I'm not saying there isn't any like magic behind it. However, that's not what makes the friendship. So we know that there are three things that make friendships. And if you can kind of, I know this is on YouTube, so I can do like a little triangle with my hands here, but if you imagine a triangle, there's certain things that we need to move people up the triangle from the acquaintances to close friends. That's it. And when you think about it that way, we can drop the shame. We can drop the, oh, this should just happen to me or not. And we could be more empowered to approach these meaningful bonds in a way that really fulfills us.
I love that, because you have your base. It's like, okay, so you made this connection and you're, you have something in common with this person, or, they just smiled at you and you see them in your third place maybe, or at work, or maybe in a Zoom, like you guys, you shared in a comment that was meaningful, and you can take like a spark. It doesn't have to be like this twin flame, like crazy connection, but it's just like, well, that person saw me and I saw them. And so, you have this base. So then you decide to nurture this. You're like, you intentionally say, I'm going to build a friendship. And so I love that, because it takes away the mystery of it, that that you offended somebody or you did something wrong. And I know when I moved from the Midwest to Georgia, and a lot of the Southern women are brought up in a different way, and I had to like learn different subtle clues that I couldn't just throw up exactly how I was feeling, because Southern women don't really share their feelings. They more like talk about clothes and food and recipes, and it's all fun. Like I have Southern friends that I just adore, but it took me a minute to be like, I can't just give them everything I'm thinking. I've got to like dose it out a little bit. Or the first time someone said bless your heart, I was like, oh my gosh, what did I do? Like, because I knew that they weren't really blessing my heart. Like this is a diminutive thing. When a Southern woman says bless your heart, you're like screwed. I'm like, I gotta start over. I need to find a new person to be a friend with.
Oh my gosh. That's always been, I just have to say too, so funny to me, because just that phrase alone, I actually didn't know for the longest time that phrase was condescending. And I'm just like, wow, like that seems so beautiful. Like, right, like you're blessing someone's heart. I really did not understand that.
And I had to just learn to trust that I meet my people, my tribe, and just keep trying, because I'm a really great friend. But yeah, so once you have this acquaintance, and then I know it's probably like a whole program, but what are some things you can do to support that friendship, to water it and make it, help it grow? And I know there's no guarantees, but I just want to give people a little snapshot and hope that it's worth building relationships and having a friend, a meaningful friend. If you're feeling isolated or sad, or everybody feels like that every once in a while. Like, where's my support? You can get into woe is me, like nobody's seeing me, and everyone has that. And I can track it. Sometimes it's even with my cycle. I'm like, I'm such a victim at this time of my cycle, but just beyond that kind of stuff, like, what would you tell people to help, like, keep friendships nourished, and to know that there's things that are very actionable and empowering to do?
Absolutely. I'm so glad you asked. And there are, like, this is a very like watered down version. A lot of this, again, this is like science, this is research, this is stuff that we know. And I always love to give credit where credit is due. The person that really put this together, her name is Shasta Nelson. She walked so we could run with this information. So if you picture that triangle there, the base at the bottom, I like to call it meaningful moments, because like right here, right now, like us having this conversation and me hearing some of your stories, that's a meaningful moment. It also comes when like maybe, you know, we are experiencing some kind of like, if you will, quote, I don't love this, but quote unquote negative emotion, like we're upset and then a friend comes and supports us. It's also a laugh with a friend. It's also, just recently, my friends and I really dancing around her apartment, making dinner. Like that's a meaningful moment. So that's the base for it, right? And then as we go up and how we nurture these friendships, I love what you said of watering them, how we move somebody from like an acquaintance to more of a deeper bond is, we do this by the way with dating. It's the same thing. Just by the way. But is we create more consistency with them. Now, some people hear that and they're like, oh my gosh, but bear with me. So, consistency can really be broken down into two parts, and that is history and frequency. So, history, what that really means, like so many people, okay, Julie, I get this all the time. This is my little pet peeve, my little rant, I guess. But people tell me all the time, but I have a best friend and I feel so close to her and I only talk to her like 4 times a year. Like, why can't I just create another friendship like that? And I'm like, because you and this best friend have either been friends since kindergarten, since college, you were roommates at one point. You have so much history built up together and so many meaningful moments built up together, right? So you can feel really close to that person because there's so much investment already there. So there's that. The other thing is frequency, and this is why so many of us become really close to our coworkers. We see them every day, right? So frequency as well. So that consistency, and it could be a little bit of both. Like a really great example of like consistency is I have a friend locally to me, like a new friend, locally to me. And the consistency that we've created of, me checking in with her, us like going on walks together, us like trying this new yoga studio that was in my place, or in our place in our city. Things like that creates like that consistency, starts to build up history and frequency. So we have that. On the other side of the triangle, we have vulnerability. Vulnerability, there's some people that are like, yes, I love that this is part of it. I love, right, like sharing my heart with other people. And then some people hear me say that and they're like, that sucks. So no matter where you fall on your feelings about vulnerability, one thing that is helpful to know about vulnerability is that vulnerability is just that person seeing you and you seeing more of them seeing more of you, just as you get to know each other. So one of my favorite examples is if you have a coworker and you work with them and they come over to your apartment or to your house, that's vulnerability. They're getting to see you outside of your work environment and get to see you in your home and in your space and how you decorated it and how you organized your shoes when people walk in, like things like that. So, as we increase consistency, increase vulnerability, and have that base of meaningful moments, we move somebody from acquaintance to close friend.
Oh yeah. Well, that's really, I like to think about that, the frequency and the vulnerability. And, it seems to me also like timing of different things, like during big transitions, you might need, different kinds of friends. And, and to me, like sometimes my expectations of how a friend should show up was like hurting my friendships, I noticed, because I was like, then I'd be disappointed and I didn't know if I should tell them that I was disappointed. And that, like you were saying before, that shame about how you think that it should be just so obvious? Why is it so easy for some people to have meaningful friendships and you feel like you're struggling, or that you're, more alone than not? And maybe it's a point of defining what type of friendships you're open for. Like you said, if you're not willing to be vulnerable and that really makes you crazy, like maybe just own that. And maybe your friendships don't look the same as everyone else's. Like, can you explore that with us? Like being authentic about what you actually need, instead of just like pulling off, like, if you watched Friends on TV, or, sitcoms about how their friendships are, well, that's TV.
Right.
Like, what's real friendship? Like, what does it mean to you? And how do you explore that with people you've worked with?
Yes, this is such a good question. Oh, my brain just lit up. I have so many things I want to say. So I will say, as far as it comes to like getting what you need in a friendship, so that's what I did back, and I did this when the pandemic hit, y'all. So if like I can do this in a global pandemic and create, like two like best friendships, I really think anybody can do this. Um, so what I did for myself, and by the way, at that time, I had friends, people in my life, and I really improved my connections. And this is really common for a lot of people, two different ways. One, I did want to make new friends. I wanted to make new friends that were closer to me, like geographically, where I could see them more often. A lot of us are lonely, and just a deep form of connection, it just is what it is being around people physically. So I was craving that. And I also wanted to have friendships where we were really, really growth mindset oriented and very passionate about like emotional work and relationships. These girls ended up being, one of them is a travel operations manager and is dealing with relationships all the time. The other one's a therapist. So it's kind of funny how that worked out. Um, but I, if you will, I prioritized those relationships, and I intentionally, and it wasn't just the two of them at the time. I picked 4 women that I was like, okay, here are women that I, that meet these, if you will, needs or desires of mine. And I'm just going to invest in those relationships. I'm going to increase the consistency and vulnerability, and we'll see what happens. One of them is not interested, and one of them isn't like a close friend, but she's up higher in my triangle, and I'm so grateful for it. Like the connection is still just as special. So, as far as creating friendships that like feel good to you, by me creating these friendships that were meeting my needs, it like a lot of people think, oh, it means I have to like leave my current friends behind. And by me getting connected to these women and building these meaningful bonds, it increased my connection for these other friends because I wasn't relying on them to be with me in person. I wasn't getting as upset, if you will, if they weren't able to drive to me. I wasn't getting that upset if they didn't want to have conversations about relationship dynamics and things like that, because I was getting that met in another place. So my connections with them and the connection I felt in my body was only increased. Now, so I do think it is important to find and think about what you're looking for. And I love the way you said that there's different kinds of friends for different kinds of areas in our lives. So for some people, they really want like a commonality friend. You do not need, and this is so huge, connection doesn't come from having like everything in common. Everybody, I'm sure, has an experience like this where they get friends with a coworker and they have a friend that they're like, we're so different, right? It's because connection really comes from feeling safe and seen in a satisfying way through the consistency, vulnerability, and meaningful moments. However, sometimes we go through periods, right, where maybe we are feeling like grief and we want to connect with somebody who's also grieving and things like that. So that is something to look for, and for people just to get curious about what they desire in friendships. But I also want to say, and this is really important, because what makes applying those 3 things to move somebody up a triangle, say create a deeper bond, what makes it really difficult, and one thing I had to get really real on myself with, even before applying this process, back when I had a lot of social anxiety, was dealing with my own thoughts about myself and about other people. Because I was at a place where I was like, oh no, like they're going to judge me for this because I was judging me for XYZ. So they're definitely going to judge me for XYZ. I was also, I have some betrayal wounds. And so I was like, oh, I can't trust other people. I also thought it would be hard. So what truly gets in the way of us applying those three things is we make connection kind of harder in our minds for a bunch of different reasons. One common thing that I really see so often, and man, when I network with people, is like the first thing they say to me is, oh, I don't have time. And a lot of times it's because we view connection and building these friendships as a chore, because we think it takes a lot of time, because we don't know how to create that feeling of being meaningfully connected with somebody. And because, again, we have these like thought barriers, these mindset barriers of thoughts about yourself, thoughts about others, that makes it more dreadful. Like, so a really common example of that is like, why would you, at the end of the week, go out to a dinner party if you're like, oh, that's going to be so much effort and so much work, and right, like it might be a little awkward. I don't even know if they like me. Like, yeah, who has time for that, right? Who wants to make time for that? Not me. Compared to if we create security within ourselves, and there's so much I could say about this, it might be a whole other episode, but for us to feel good with ourselves and for us to create that connection in our bodies, to be open to it, that is what really fuels us, that energy of connection, of being willing to connect. And that was truly how I created these friendships for myself, like 4.5 years ago at this point. So that was kind of a lot, but anyway.
Yeah, so I want to simmer that down a little. And okay, I want to make sure I'm hearing. So if you work all week and it's Friday night and you want to hang out with friends, so you connect to yourself, your energy level, and say, well, I have energy to order pizza and make a salad. Does anyone want to come over?
Yes, that's so good.
So you tune into what your energy levels are. Because my history, like I have different periods of my life, and it used to be you came home, you got dialed up, and you went out on Friday night and you hit the bars or whatever. And like, I have no interest in that at all anymore. Like, I don't have the energy. I don't like the scene. I'm married. I don't really want to go out without my husband because there's so much to navigate right now in the clubs and being victimized. And it's a little scary. I think tuning into what situation you feel safe and you feel comfortable in, and then inviting them into your perfect idea and seeing if that resonates with them. But that's part of being vulnerable, saying, hey, this is where I am. Where are you? That check-in.
It absolutely is vulnerable. It really is. And I think it's so beautiful to honor that, though. And we think sometimes that by saying no, it means that we don't have to connect with somebody, but the opposite is true. Like, recently I had a friend say no to like spending time with me at some event. And I was like, I'm even paying attention on my content, haven't you? Because they said in there, they were like, hey, but I'm really glad that you asked me. This is what's going on for me right now, and I'm just working through it. And because this person was vulnerable, and they stated, right, in general, that the connection was important, they said no. And I walked around that event feeling so connected to them after I got that message. So it doesn't always have to be, I need to force myself to go out and spend time with people. That's not what it's saying at all. I love what you said about inviting people into what you need and the experiences you want to have. That's so huge. I also want to say, though, for a lot of us, the majority of us, We need to increase our capacity to feel connected, though. We need, a lot of us, our brains are wired to be protective first and foremost. And so a lot of us kind of like see our relationships and our friendships that way. And because so many of us don't have the meaningful bonds that we want, it's like looking at the second half of the triangle here, being like, oh, I got to make sure I'm protected and safe in these relationships. And that can keep us very distant from people, if that makes sense. So we all, honestly, in my opinion, we all need to increase our capacity to connect with others. And so one way to make that triangle easier is not to go and like force yourself to go out. It is not what I'm saying. But to increase your capacity to look for connection and to feel connection. A lot of my clients are overthinkers, and we have this activity called social aftercare. I help every client build their own, but because the clients will typically ruin it and overthink it after and be like, oh my gosh, I said this and that was dumb, or they totally judged me for this. One thing we do to increase their capacity to feel connected is to ask themselves questions like, who like really engaged with me, or what were moments that I felt connected with somebody that maybe I'm missing. And you'd be surprised at what we might miss just because we're really focused on protecting ourselves and our brain rather than connecting with others. So a really great example, and I did this a lot in the beginning. It was so huge for increasing my confidence as well. I was looking at, yeah, like so-and-so laughed at my joke and so-and-so asked to spend time together. And I felt really confident here. Like if we can increase our capacity and pay attention more to those things, it increases our desire to want to be around other humans, to connect with other humans, and increases our desire to be vulnerable and to say, hey, this is all I'm up for tonight. Right? Like I'm only up for making a salad and having some pizza. It increases our capacity to connect. So yeah, I would really love for everybody to leave in that today. Like encourage you, like I like to say, like it's almost like putting on glasses. Try to look for those like one connection glasses and to look for the connection that you have in your life, because connection is fueling, and when we feel connected, we just create more of it.
I love that. And it's empowering. It's from you and knowing that you're good enough and you're divine and you deserve it. Just put your glasses on and decide to see it.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. So I do love it. It's just such a great message. And I did want to ask you, are you keeping a tally? You said you want to reach 10,000 people. Where are you on your journey of that?
So I just started my podcast. Is literally brand new to the world as of like last week. It's called the Socially Delightful Podcast. And so I want to grow that way. But as far as the work that I have been doing for, oh my gosh, the past 4 years now, so far I have over 65 clients. So we're off to a great start. We have a wonderful long career to go. But I'm hoping...
Well, I would be encouraged that if people share this episode, that would be a contact.
Absolutely.
So we'll keep tallies of the listens and get you closer on that, on your tally.
Thank you. I would appreciate that.
Yeah, and everyone can help. So anyone who, if you're listening to this and you're thinking of somebody, I know I saw a really sad post on Facebook. It was like someone in my community, it was a community page. They said their daughter was 14 and didn't have anyone to hang out with, didn't have any friends. And I was just, my heart just bled for that girl, because 14 is supposed to be, carefree and just go and have fun and play with makeup and dance. I'm going to age myself. We used to put on records and dance, but you could sync up your Bluetooth mic, speaker and dance. Like it's the same thing. So I just, I know that there's a lot of people, like you said, from 14, and your oldest client was in her 60s, I think you said?
Yes, my oldest client right now is 66. I've worked for my entire career, though, I've worked with people I like to say like that are retiring and that are entering high school. So
Yeah.
it really is a problem that is affecting all of us. I will say though, social anxiety, and there's so many factors. It includes like social media and feeling like you need to be on all of the time, but um social anxiety has like really, really increased, especially for the younger generation. And that gets in the way of them connecting and applying this work as well. And that's another huge reason why I'm doing what I'm doing is I don't want our loneliness epidemic, because the U.S. Surgeon General said we are in a loneliness epidemic. I don't want it to keep getting worse.
Yeah, and it's something free. Anyone can help with this. You don't need any kind of medicine or like it's connecting, reaching out, and like having resources like yours. And did you want to shout out your website where they can connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So we just put up, thanks to Sam, my amazing virtual assistant, we just put up two of our best trainings that I've done. These trainings were used at the largest women's conference in my state, so we're very proud of them.
Nice.
And they are how to belong at any event. So how to walk into any event and create that feeling of belonging. And it's more than just the feeling as well. There's also like tips on how to just really enjoy the socializing and connecting with others as well. And then we have another training these are all free and available. So the next training is how to make a friend at any event. And it goes into a little bit more about the triangle I talked about today. But instead of just like going to an event and meeting somebody and having that magical moment of quote unquote clicking with somebody, it's okay, how can I turn that into a friendship? How can I nurture that in a way that feels good? And you might be surprised at how much easier it could be than a lot of us think.
Well, thank you. That's just a beautiful message, and it's inspiring. And like I said, I just hope it reaches the people who need to hear this. And I know I've learned a little about self-reflecting and how I'm showing up as a friend from this conversation. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much
It's
for
been really
having me.
great.
Your questions were so beautiful.
Oh, it was easy. It was easy to ask. Thank you for being so
Awesome.
open.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you.